welcome with me. I need to see some emojis in the chat room. Please welcome with me all well Ahigbe. Okay, over to you, all well. All well, if you're in the room, it's time to take over. Okay, let's give him a moment.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abiodun, for the very generous introduction. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today. Really delighted to be leading this conversation um, with you and more than 200 plus African nonprofit leaders. So let me just, I can go on to share my screen, right, Abiodun?
Yes, please.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes, I
Are you
can.
able to see my slide? Great. And can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Awesome. So just wanted to say I'm a huge fan, first of all, of the work that ACT Foundation does in terms of your transformative grants in healthcare, education, entrepreneurship, as well as really how you're helping to build the ecosystem in philanthropy for African nonprofits, even going beyond the grantees that you're supporting. So particularly, I like your knowledge series. I know I've benefited myself. I think the last one I attended was the one on mastering money. So sometime last year. So I've gained a lot of knowledge from the conversations that you lead here, as well as your ACT board to really great opportunity for me to learn a lot more about the unique experiences of nonprofit leaders and how they are overcoming it. So it gives me great honor to be here today to also contribute to enabling organizations know how to unlock funding opportunities going forward. So thank you, Abiodun, and the team for the opportunity. So just like Abiodun has said, what I prioritize right now is really helping French-speaking and English-speaking African NGOs find ways to diversify their funding in response to the changes in the landscape. But beyond, prior to that, though, I do come with experience in fundraising from the typical traditional donors, governments, bilateral, UN agencies, foundations.
Hello, all well.
Yes, can you
Yeah,
hear
could
me?
you please project a little more? Yeah, I think a couple of people are struggling to hear you.
Is it better now?
Yes,
Is it better?
thank you.
Okay, great.
Yes, please.
So I come with that experience fundraising from both traditional sources and alternative sources like businesses, high net worth individuals as well. And I bring to this experience, I have this experience from fundraising from African NGOs as well, based in African NGOs and then international NGOs based in country offices across West Africa, as well as INGOs based in their country offices in DC, alongside monitoring and evaluation firms working across sub-Saharan Africa. So South Sudan in Eastern Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa, and Mozambique in Southern Africa. As a result of the changes that we're seeing in the landscape, what I have been doing is helping transition organizations towards tapping into alternative funding models such as corporate partnerships, social enterprise models, local philanthropy, and individual giving. So working one-on-one with organizations, also training them too as well, and helping them to see opportunities where they probably were not focused on prior to now. You can always catch up on the insights that I'm sharing every Monday on a series called Fundraise with All Well, every Monday by 9 a.m. in Lagos, where for the last 22 months, consecutive weeks, I have 89 consecutive weeks, I've enabled more than 66,000 organizations learn how to leverage alternative models towards mobilizing resources for their work. Now, I know that we've been in a lot of conversations around grant writing, around funding opportunities, particularly over the last 15 months, with so much turmoil happening in the sector. I know that you've been in webinars, you've been in trainings, you've been in a whole lot of things. So I want to ensure that you get the most value for your time from this conversation today. So this leads me to make a promise to you at the very beginning. And I hope that by the end of this session, you will agree with me that I would have fulfilled my promise eventually. And my promise is that I would work with you to help understand, to ensure that you can understand the donor expectations for better positioning your organization for funding, not last year, not 5 years ago, but in 2026. This is significantly much more different compared to what was obtainable just 15 months ago. At the end of this session as well, you should have all it takes to be able to figure out the most common grant writing mistakes and how you can proactively mitigate them, or better still, avoid these mistakes. So I spend time identifying from my own experience and also experience I have supporting organizations across the continent. I identify 10 most common mistakes, and then I pick about 5 of these mistakes and I double down on them to show you at least 3 ways in which you can avoid or mitigate these 5 most prevalent mistakes that oftentimes come up in the work that we do. Eventually, I move you to the point where I help you identify and leverage the elements of a proposal that would make it so compelling that it would increase your chances of success from donor. So I know that a number of us already responded to the poll that Abiodun put, but I still wanted to hear from you because I'm cognizant of the fact that this is mobilizing resources is something that you probably have done for a long time to help get your organization to where it is right now. So you've had both good and bad experiences. So the first thing I would want to ask is, if you think back on the most recent grant proposal that you won, what do you think contributed to the success of that grant proposal? So if you can put that answer maybe in the chat, or if I can have like 1 minute to, I don't know if it's possible for someone to speak in just about a minute to share. Otherwise, you can just put your answer in the chat. What contributed to the success of your last grant proposal? What factor? Awesome. Zinat said the grant was successful because the donor knew them and he already had a relationship. So a success factor here would be that there was an existing relationship with the donor. Abubakar says there's attention to detail. I see a relationship coming out really well. Susan emphasizes the importance of being data-driven. So let me pause there first and then turn to the other question. Now, if you look at it in the reverse, for the last grant proposal that you didn't win, why do you think you lost out in that grant proposal? Retrospectively now, what could have led to you not winning that grant proposal or that grant funding? Again, you see how most people are saying existing relationship was a key component of their success, and it was also a deal breaker in places where they couldn't succeed. I see audit reports. I'm guessing that perhaps there were not enough financial compliance measures. That was something that may have led to them losing out in that grant proposal. So this is interesting, and indeed, I do have some thoughts to share about that going forward. But it's helpful to see how even from our base understanding right now of what might be the component of your success in a grant proposal and what might be the reason for a failure, we see how relationship is coming out really clearly. Please continue making your inputs in the chat. It's looking very interesting right there. I would want you to follow me very closely because basically there are at least 3 components of this presentation today. The first is I walk you through what is happening in the landscape right now in terms of fundraising, and I tailor it to your nature as an African nonprofit. So happy to see a lot of my Zimbabwean and South African friends here in the call, and people from all across Africa. This is very interesting. And that is kind of how I've tailored the presentation as well. What is happening broadly across the sub-Saharan African landscape? And how does this determine how you should position yourself in front of donors? That's one. The second thing now is, what are those common grant writing mistakes that people typically make over and over again? How can you mitigate these mistakes? Then I introduce something to you that you probably have not been very familiar with. You may have done it without really knowing exactly what you're doing, in that sense. Well, I help you think of how grant writing is not a one-time event. It's not a one-time thing. It is actually a process, and it occurs in phases, and how you can take charge of your ability to organize yourself in the grant writing process and increase your chances of success eventually. Finally, I let you know what the elements of a compelling grant application are. So in terms of what is happening in the landscape and how does this affect you, from my work across sub-Saharan Africa, I see that, broadly speaking, African NGOs do not take cognizance of trends that are happening in the sector. And even if they do know what's happening passively, they do not analyze it in a way to understand what this means for their ability to fundraise. Now, I am currently leading the Sub-Saharan Africa component of a global study that is funded by Gates Foundation. And it's a study on localization. And this is a study that encompasses nonprofits in Latin America, in Asia Pacific, in the Middle East and North Africa. And what we're trying to find out is what is the experiences of local actors in terms of fundraising, in terms of partnerships and capacity strengthening, and how has it been over the last 10 years. But what was interesting in the study that we're still doing, and we're having some preliminary results, is when we reached out to respondents across Africa, and we said, do you think that in spite of what is happening in the landscape, in spite of the changes with diminished funding from governments, do you think it's possible that you might still be able to grow more income in 2026? You might be able to win more funding from your normal traditional donors. Do you think it's possible? And across board, from respondents in Asia, in Latin America, and in Middle East, African nonprofits were the most optimistic that somehow, even though this is not supported by data, they thought that they can grow their income. They could grow their income this year. And when we dug deeper, we found out that that belief was not based on facts. It was based on optimism. It was based on hope, or a desire to typically just attribute most things to spiritual inclinations and, let's say, our spiritual hope and belief. Now, that is helpful to help us get that might be acceptable in terms of us being able to continue doing or get in the mindset of doing our work. But in terms of mobilizing resources, you need to know what is happening. And what is happening shows the very importance of donor positioning, which is what I'll discuss in the next slide. In a nutshell, funding is significantly reducing from the key sources of funding that typically support African nonprofits. So by 2024, as at 2024 ending, 90% of African nonprofits were getting funding from two sources, primarily governments and UN agencies. And most of that funding was coming, that's Western governments. Most of that funding was coming down through subcontracting. But if you look at US funding in particular, in January last year, they paused it for 90 days. Eventually in July, USAID was dismantled. And USAID's loss is a very big problem for all of us across Africa, because in 2024 alone, USAID gave $12 billion directly to African nonprofits and other social impact actors on the continent. And now that whole amount, that whole pocket of money is gone with the admission of USAID. When I talk with organizations, when I work with them one-on-one, they say, okay, it's possible that something else will come up within the US aid structure and it will replace USAID, and perhaps we can still keep getting the amounts of money that we used to get from USAID. But the facts are saying something totally different. So the US State Department just released a 5-year strategic plan that will guide how they do funding over the next 5 years, from 2025 to 2030. And what they have said now is that they are going to prioritize investments instead of aid. So instead of when those times where they will give money to us to do work directly on the ground, now they are saying they're going to focus their attention on creating what they call trade compacts directly with governments to facilitate that kind of thing instead of getting money down to us. And in fact, they have put what they call a 3-step criteria for determining who gets US funding going forward. So what this means is when you submit a proposal to any agency that is affiliated with the US that is funding, they typically will want to look at it through this 3-step criteria. Does your proposal make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous? And your guess is as good as mine on how well your proposal will meet all of these 3 criteria. Now, other people are turning to European funding. And again, they're not noticing what is happening. For at least the last 3 years, from 2023, European funding has been declining significantly from its peak during COVID. Now we have more than 40% cuts to aid from the UK, 9% from Germany, 11% from France. And what we are seeing now is that European governments are, instead of sending this money across to Africa to fund us, to fund nonprofits, they are instead spending the money inside their own countries to fund what they call challenges that are caused by international, what they call irregular migration or asylum seekers, etc. So in their mind, why send the money to Africa to solve challenges around education and healthcare when we can spend that money in-house in the UK and use it to tackle the pressures on our healthcare systems because of the influx of asylum seekers. So there's that big, and then there's also the rise of far right and populist governments in Europe. What I'm trying to say in essence is that European funding is also not something that you can bank on going forward because it's drastically reducing. Now, this leaves UN funding. Problem with UN funding as well is that UN was primarily funded by contributions by the US and other state governments. And those funding amounts have been dwindling significantly. If you look at last year, only 21% of the UN's humanitarian budget was funded. And in fact, as of January, the UN Secretary General was saying the UN could run out of funds to even pay staff or to run programs by July 2026, because most country governments did not deliver on their commitments to fund the UN, on their annual commitments that they need to make to fund the UN. This means that, and this is something the UN has been playing around with since last year. They call it UN80 initiative. And they're thinking to save costs. They want to merge different UN agencies together. So think of agencies like WHO, like UNFPA. These are typically agencies that are driving the work that we see on the ground here in across Africa. But these are some of the agencies that we are hearing that there could be likely mergers amongst them. What this means for you is if you got some funding from WHO in 2024, and of course, this is still hypothetical since we haven't gotten the final things, but it is possible that even the WHO that funded you, the UN agency that funded you, might not even exist the next couple of months. So that definitely means that there's also going to be a gap in funding. We are now seeing a lot of overwhelming nonprofit applications going towards foundations. We're seeing comparatively smaller budgets that they already have if you compare it to government funding. And again, even these foundations are experiencing significant political pressure. So for instance, in the US, some of the biggest foundations that fund work in Africa, like Gates Foundation, like MacArthur, like Rockefeller, these are the biggest foundations that have assets worth more than $10 billion and above. And they have come under significant pressure by the current UN's government that says if they want to continue funding NGOs in Africa, they will have to pay more tax compared to if they funded nonprofits in the US. So it's more expensive for them to keep on funding us. All of this sets the stage for what you should be doing in terms of donor positioning. And that's something I share about in the next slide. You have to be investing in relationships. And a number of people already get it in the chat. Relationships is the what take your application over and beyond the crowded applications that most people are getting now, the pressure that is available on those smaller pots of funding right now. If you are able to strike a chord and get these donors to know you beforehand, understand the niche that you feel, and understand the great work that you're doing in the community, and then after that, you now go on to make an application to them if it's in an open call, or if you have a very solid relationship with them, there are even opportunities where you can get invited on a personal basis, not in an open call, to actually secure some funding to continue doing the work that you're doing. You need to be investing in building relationships now more than ever before. Most times when nonprofits have a fundraising strategy for a particular year, they just focus on how many grants we're going to write, how much they want to raise, and relationship building is an afterthought. It's not something that comes to mind. It's not something that they think about. This should be the most important thing you're prioritizing this year. How do you target which kinds of donors are the right ones for your work? How do you get in touch with them? How do you find a way to get to introduce yourself and let them get to know you and discuss what the possibilities are for collaboration? Indeed, you also need to demonstrate a strong track record of success on social media. You need to be capturing the impact you're making and sharing it as much as possible. Now, when I say social media, most nonprofits are on Facebook, which is not bad, and on Instagram, that's helpful. But actually, the decision makers you want to be targeting, the donors that you're looking for, they are domiciled on LinkedIn. And that's a platform that up till now, very few nonprofits around the world are still taking advantage of. If you're sharing more of your successes on that platform and connecting with those donors and showing yourself in the third point is becoming a thought leader in your subject area. And that's something that ACT Foundation has done consistently in this landscape of philanthropy, being not just being a foundation that is providing grants alone, but one that is catalyzing change in the landscape. So whether it's the ACT board, whether it's the ACT Knowledge series, you see that they have positioned themselves in a way where when you think of leaders within this sector, you think of them instead of just people that hand over money. That's exactly how people need to know you. And most importantly, on LinkedIn, not on Facebook. Facebook is for everybody, but LinkedIn is where the decision makers are on. That's where they stay. That's where they put ideas all together. That's where they spend most of their time. And that's where you can reach them out. You can reach out to them personally. So that's a place. If you work in education, if you work in entrepreneurship, you need to be understanding what the trends are, what is happening in education right now. Where are the next big breaks going to come in education? What are people putting their big bets on? Some donors call it big bets. What are the big bets that they are making in terms of how things are going to change? And what do you think about those things? Where do you fit in to those things? So you need to be sharing think pieces, you need to be sharing your ideas, you need to be sharing what you're thinking around how things are changing. Establish yourself as a force to be reckoned with. The next thing is you need to show up actively in NGO networks and coalitions. It's important that people get to know who you are and get to know how well you do the work that you do. Now, a lot of networks and coalitions you could consider, but if you're in Nigeria, at least you need to be in the Nigerian network of NGOs. Yeah, that's where you need to be, and you need to not just be a passive member, but people need to keep hearing about the work they are doing. You need to be at events that they are holding. That's one way to catch the attention of donors. So once donors keep hearing your name coming up repeatedly in, let's say, in subgroups, in working groups, at events, they see you putting out blogs, articles, op-eds, all of those kinds of things, then they begin to think of you as a much more credible voice in the space that you're in. Finally, you can do all of these things, and these other things are external. Relationship building, track record, thought leadership, showing up in coalitions and networks. But if you don't have the internal systems, you're going to set yourself up for failure. Because eventually, when you attract those donors and they come in and they look into your internal systems and they say that you don't have structures for project management, for financial management, they see that your operations are not well structured, they see that you don't have policies in place, then all of the work you would have done, the first 4 things you would have done would be for nothing. So what you need to do, even before you start investing in relationships with donors, is look at yourself and ask yourself, if a donor wanted to invest in a world-class organization in Benin City, for instance, if they wanted to invest and give funding to a particular organization that has the scope and the experience to deliver on a very important assignment in Benin City, will they choose me? Do I have what it takes to stand up? Can my level be at like a world-class level? Can I go head to head with, obviously, I know you don't have the resources like an INGO does, but generally speaking, in terms of the way you're basically organized, can you stand competition with an INGO for funding from donors? That's something you should be thinking around, and immediately, little by little, begin putting those things in place. Now, common grant writing mistakes. This was August last year, and a nonprofit network in South Africa, they wanted to gather a couple of us fundraising experts around the continent. And they brought myself and 2 Kenyan fundraisers and the South African one. And we had an Ask Me Anything session on fundraising. So instead of creating slides like this, I just showed up, all of us just showed up in the call, and the entire 2 hours was just to answer the most common problems around fundraising that people had. And as you can imagine, the most important questions, or the majority of the questions, were around grant writing mistakes. So I took a look at a number of those that we tackled. In that session, I also looked at my background too as well, mistakes that I have made personally, and the ones that I see my clients make too as well within the sector. And then I said, let me see how to highlight a number of these mistakes and kind of walk you through, take a few of them and walk you through how you should avoid, practical steps for you to avoid making these mistakes going forward. The first mistake is not following donor guidelines. They give you a template, you don't use it. They say these are the activities that they want to carry out. You propose something a lot more than those. They say this is a particular budget that they're working with. They're probably working with, like, let's say, $150,000 budget, and then you propose something for $300,000. So you are not following the donor guidelines. Those things are clearly stated in black and white. But you think otherwise. You think that you can sneak in by doing it the way you want to do it, particularly when it comes to developing a particular proposal. It's not going to get you forward. Misalignment with donor priorities. You haven't taken the time to figure out if this donor is the right person for you. For instance, ACT Foundation is funding work across health, education, entrepreneurship, environment, leadership. If you look at their most recent call for proposals in January, they said they were looking for funding. They wanted to fund work in health and entrepreneurship. They are funding other things, but they were funding work. That particular call was for health and entrepreneurship. But for someone that is misaligned with the donor priorities, they will go in there and provide and propose a project on leadership, even though the donor has clearly said, this is not what I want to focus on in this particular tranche, in this particular funding call. You need to be attentive. You need to make sure that you're aligned with what the donor is prioritizing at a particular time. The goals and objectives are not smart. They're very generic. They're not specific. There's no way to measure it. It's not actionable. It's not time-bound. You just provide goals and objectives. They're filled with flowery language. They look good on paper. That is why you put it out there. You keep saying that there's a problem that you're trying to solve. No evidence-based research for the proposal. You say that there's a problem that you want to solve, but we don't know how much of a problem it is. Or it can even be a problem, but then you can now say, let's say you're working on out-of-school children, and then you say Nigeria's out-of-school rates is 99%. So like 99% of Nigerian kids are out of school. And then you give us a citation that is for 2020 or 2018. That is not a recent citation. So there's no evidence base for what you're saying, because for all we know, this is 2026. It is possible that very likely that things have significantly changed in the problem you say you are keeping track of. So if you submit a proposal and then the research is outdated, there's no evidence to back up what you claim is a big problem that you want the donor to work on right now and give you money to deliver on or to tackle, then that's a problem. Poor budgeting. Your figures are not verified. Those figures are bloated. We don't really understand the cost. You don't add what we call a budget, you don't add what we call budgeting notes, so we can understand what you're saying. And then again, those things, or let's say you're dealing in multiple currencies, you use currency conversions that are not accurate. Poor budgeting is going to turn off whoever it is that is receiving the proposal from you. Submitting on the deadline day, Abiodun mentioned it at the very beginning, and I saw a number of people scratching their heads with emojis in the chat. It's a big challenge. It's a big problem. Things must definitely go wrong when you leave it on the deadline day. I have a lot of examples to share about how that worked out for me myself. No compelling storytelling. Everything's looking very drab. It's all a number of data. It's all straightforward. There's no emotion that is sparked by what you are writing in your proposal. We can't really figure out how this is tackling, how this is changing lives, how this is really impacts people on the ground. It's not moving, it's not compelling, it's not persuasive. Insufficient monitoring and evaluation. You say so many things there. It's a lot of promises. It's a lot of things that you believe will change automatically when you do a particular training. We don't know how you're going to measure it. Even if you say you're going to measure it, we can't see. You don't budget for how to measure it. So it looks like you're just playing with us. So you just put it in there because you wanted to be able to put it in there. Overemphasis on problems with no clear solutions. How do you know that the problem for out of school children is enrolling them in school? What makes you think if you enroll the kids in school, that will solve the challenge of out of school children? You don't think really critically on what the solutions are that you're proposing, and if it will significantly tackle what the problem is. In fact, you're not sure what the problem is. You haven't thought very critically on what the problem is to figure it out before going on to just give us some solutions that might not fly. You're overstating your programming capacity. So you don't have what it takes to implement the project across all the 6 states in Southwest Nigeria, because you're only active in Lagos. You barely have done any project outside. But nevertheless, since there's funding for you to do work in all 6 states in Southwest Nigeria, you claim that you can do it. I tell people that the challenge is not even getting the funding. The most difficult thing is when you get the funding, is delivering on the promise that you made in the proposal. That's when it becomes challenging, because you might be lucky enough to get the funding without putting the right things in place. Somehow you might get it, but then once you default on that in the process of it being implemented, then you cancel out any potential opportunity for subsequent funding, and you risk dragging your name in the mud going forward. So the 10 mistakes, we can usually use the whole day talking on all of these 10 mistakes. I pick a few of them, I pick just 5, and tell you what to do to avoid these mistakes. And I start with ignoring the donor guidelines. The donor has told you specifically what they are looking for. They've told you how they want to go about it. They've told you what you should put in the particular, they've told you, let's say, the kind of staffing that you need to put on the bid, the experiences that they should have. If you want to avoid making this kind of mistake, before you even put pen to paper, you need to do what we call a go, no go criteria screening to determine if you have what it takes to even apply for that particular grant or to implement it in case you somehow manage to come out tops in the proposal review phase. That go-no-go screening means you look at what the terms of reference means, you spend time understanding it, and then you say, do you have a past experience? It could be a number of different checklists that you've gone through. Do you have what the past experience is for this particular bid? Do you have the required team to deliver on it? Do you have any experience working with this donor before? Have you gotten any grant before? Do you have any existing relationship? Will implementing this project, does this project align with your community needs? Those are all the kind of things that you want to look at in the go, no go criteria to be sure if you have what it takes and if this is the right opportunity for you. Then ignoring the donor guidelines, to avoid that, you also need to be studying the terms of reference and ensure that you create a compliance checklist. What exactly is the donor looking for? Who are the people that they want you to put, that the donor wants you to put on the bid? In what ways does the donor require that this project should be carried out? In what kinds of locations? If you rush into reading, usually the terms of reference is a PDF document. Some people could just sit down and read what is written on the website that introduces the opportunity and maybe download templates and then just go on and write it off. Or they could even download the PDF document and not spend time reading it. In terms of reference should be studied, not read. You should not read it once. You should read it first, take a paper and write the list of what we call the compliance checklist, the things that they are requesting for you to have. Then go and write the proposal, come back, when you've written the proposal, compare the proposal you've written to that compliance checklist that the donor is requesting for, and make sure that all of those things are aligned, first of all. Do that at least 3 times. So you first read it the first time to get the compliance checklist, then read what you've written, compare if it works, then do the final one, and then read it the last time before you submit. But people just read it once, get the general gist of what the donor is saying, and go off and write and submit, and wonder why you somehow didn't win the proposal. Review your proposal at least twice before submission. At least 2 times. You need to be able to ensure that what you're writing is what the donor is looking for. If you use these 3 measures, you wouldn't be falling guilty to the mistake of ignoring the donor guidelines. How do you ensure you're not misaligned with the donor priorities? You need to first do a lot of research around mapping what the donor requires, mapping who the donor is, what their priority is, if this is something that aligns with the work that you currently do. You need to ensure that there's a strategic fit with the donor before you apply. Otherwise, you risk just applying for the sake of applying, running up the numbers of applications you've made, and looking back and seeing a very terrible win rate because what you have written is not aligned with the work that you're supposed to do. So you end up wasting your time, wasting the level of effort of you and your team, and eventually becoming very disillusioned when you end up not winning anything. You need to be sure that that alignment is done. Now, if you need to know that when there's a call for proposals, that call for proposals has been written out of something that is there's something at the back end of the donor. So the terms of reference has been taken out of the donor's priorities, maybe the donor's strategic plan or the donor's program sheets. That it's from there that the program officer sat down to write the terms of reference. So if you really want to make sure that your proposal is strategically aligned, you need to go beyond the terms of reference that you received. So use the terms of reference to write the proposal, but to really make sure that you're hitting the right notes, you're using the right language that the donor is looking for, then you need to go beyond that terms of reference and look at what the strategic priorities are of the donor. What exactly are they trying to achieve over the next 5? Usually they have like a 5-year strategic plan. What do they really want to do in terms of, let's say, maternal and child health exactly? What are they trying to accomplish over the next 5 years? Because it's that thing they're trying to accomplish between 2025 and 2030 that has led them to create that terms of reference to which you are responding to with your proposal. So you need to echo, you need to use the right language. You need to echo on the right target population. Imagine if the priority for let's say healthcare, maternal and child health is women with disabilities. That's what their focus is for the next 5 years. And they don't put it in the tour. Even if they put it, they might just put it amongst all of those other things you think is just a normal criteria that people might use to show your how you are doing DEI, your diversity, equity, and inclusion metrics, all of those things. But if you go back and read their, let's say, their strategic priority on healthcare, and then you see that, hey, the focus is really all about women with pregnant women with disabilities, then you know that you need to emphasize a lot more on that within the proposal that you're writing. That's something you need to emphasize. Eventually, you need to show how your project is contributing to meeting the donor's objectives. Mistake 3 is vague and smart goals and objectives. You don't just want to strengthen the opportunity availability, strengthen the, let's say, the skills of young girls to be able to generate, or young women to be able to generate income. You need it has to be something that it's very strategic. During what time frame do you want to do it? What target number of people are you looking to do this for? And how exactly are you going to be able to measure what the strengthening that you're trying to carry out? So those objectives, the goals is really the overall goal of the project. The objectives are the things that will lead to the activities. If you are not specific, you would end up creating goals and objectives that are not smart, and then just draw out numbers, target numbers off the top of your head when it comes to you writing the activities. So you first need to make sure that the goals and objectives are smart so that the activities can align with those objectives that are already smart. In that sense, there's a very logical chain, and that's how you do that logical framework thing that I'll speak about in parent monitoring and evaluation. Well, everything is really well aligned. Everything makes a lot of sense. It's very rational. Anybody can pick up your proposal and see how you intend to move from those goals and objectives to the activities, the outputs, the outcomes, and eventually how it contributes to an impact. All of these things kind of follow a straightforward line. You also don't want to write too many objectives. It's an objective. If you write too many objectives, first of all, you tell the donor that you don't really understand what you're doing. That's one. Or better, or worse still, you're over-promising. Imagine you have like 5 objectives. Each of those objectives have like maybe two. If you have two activities, which is quite small, but even if you have 2 activities, that's already like 10 activities under 5 objectives. A donor will just look at it and be like, you really don't look like you are going to be good value for money. So even if we give you the money, you probably will deliver very half-heartedly on each of those 10 activities. The objectives should be just few, 2 to 3, clear indicators, put a particular fixed number of activities and work with that and make it as persuasive and as compelling as possible. You don't have to write so many objectives or so many activities to make it look like you really know exactly what you're doing. After writing all of this, after developing the entire proposal, look at those objectives again. How clear are they? How easy to measure would those objectives be? Those are the kind of things you need to do on your own end to ensure that the person at the other end, the person at the donor side, when they look at what you're doing, they understand how reasonable it is. Mistake 4 is submitting on the deadline day. And last week I was doing a fundraising coaching for African member organizations of a global human rights coalition. And I let them know the importance of having like a very structured process when writing a grant application. So we were a much smaller room than, I think we're what, 260, 58 of us today, just about 20 something of us. So we're actually able to have like a breakout room. And what I did for them was find a particular live grant opportunity that was going to be that with a deadline for the next 1 month. So we had like 4 weeks between that, the time of our presentation and the deadline for that grant. And we worked with what we call a proposal writing calendar to see how we can break down the task, all of the tasks that are involved in developing that proposal, break it down, allocate time slots, or allocate the number of days it will take us to deliver on each of these smaller subtasks that eventually lead us to the whole aim of submitting 3 days before the deadline. So tasks like studying the tour and writing a compliance checklist. The next thing is doing the go, no go criteria for determining if this is something you should work on. Then allocating, let's say about 3 days, for instance, to allocating like maybe 1 day or two to get the whole team together to brainstorm the activities you actually and the approach you want to use. Then allocating maybe like 2 days to write the first draft of the proposal, giving some time as well to the finance person. We all have finance people in our organizations. You know how busy they are. They're working on so many things, and your proposal is usually a very big priority for them. So you need to always be on their matter, telling them, hey, please, I have this proposal. This is the due date. I need you to prepare the budget. These are the activities I want to carry out. This is the first draft of the proposal. So you need to give them adequate time, a day or two, to develop the budget. And then eventually you need to have somebody review with the first version of the proposal, the first version of the budget, then go back to the drawing board, write the final version, get it reviewed again, then eventually submit 3 days, put the annexes together, eventually submit 3 days before the deadline. The problem I have, and I know that it's not easy, not everybody has a very big team, and I'm speaking to a good mix of organizations, big and small. I know you would argue that you don't have a big team, it's just you and a number of volunteers, etc. But you don't need to write the grant. And this is a challenge I see with particularly small organizations. The executive director should not write the proposal himself or herself. The role of the executive director is not to write the proposal. Their role is to be the reviewer of the proposal. You're supposed to get somebody that you trust. So whatever number your team is, you need at least 3 people on a particular proposal. You need somebody that writes the proposal. You need somebody that writes the budget. And then you need you, the ED, to be the final reviewer. So what you do is when they bring the first draft of the budget and the proposal, you sit down and you look at the proposal you've written, and you pick up the terms of reference checklist and you compare notes. So you are the one with the most experience. You are the one, hopefully, with relationships, whichever way, whether you have them or you do not have. But it's reasonable to infer that you are the most experienced person on the team. So your role is not to be writing it. Your role is to sit down and put yourself in the position of Abiodun or whoever it is at ACT Foundation that's going to be reviewing your proposal and say, this thing that my proposal writer has written, or my volunteer, my most trusted volunteer has written, and my budget person has written, will it make a lot of sense to the donor? Does it meet this donor criteria? Does it meet the evaluation criteria in the terms of reference? Like, so you can sit down and literally score yourself and say, what I have written in my team personnel, will it get me up to 15 out of 20 marks that are going to be accorded to my proposal according to these terms of reference? That is your role as the most experienced person in the team, as the executive director. You do that, you give your feedback and say, no, I don't like it, I don't like it this way, do this, do that, tweak this, tweak that. You send it back to the team member, and then they go back to the drawing board, they follow your submissions, they bring it back to you. Then you look at it again, finally, and you look at what the terms of reference is saying. When you make that correlation, you get them to submit it. You need to work in a team. That's the only way you're going to do it. Like Abiodun said, if there's a scenario where there's 3 weeks for the proposal, you can't afford to start writing it 3 days before the due date. That is going to be a big challenge for you. So you need to make sure that you're working on it as much as possible. Mistake 5, and this is the final mistake I want to take here, is the fact that you need to ensure your monitoring and evaluation is very solid. So you can't afford to have monitoring and evaluation that does not capture the impact that you want to make. You need to clarify your theory of change going forward. How exactly do all the things you have talked about in this proposal, how exactly do they link together? In what way do you ensure that the activities that you've proposed, that it correlates with the outputs that will come out, and then these outputs will contribute to the outcomes, the intermediate change that you want to see in the lives of your beneficiaries, and eventually the work that the project you're implementing, coupled with the work of other stakeholders in the sector, it will all combine to make the impact that we want to see in the community. So there are various ways you can do the theory of change. A very simple one to use if you're not looking for something complicated is what we call the if, then, because. So the if is you put the if there, and then you put the objectives that you already have. Let's say there are 2 or 3 objectives. If you do this thing, if this number of people are trained on this, if let's say you have a particular, if you're able to have this convening and then this is the outcome, if there's a let's say a multi-stakeholder collaboration, all of these things, then after the then, you now have to write the number of how things are going to change eventually and the ways in which those things will make a difference in the lives.
Let's give the speaker a moment.
Apologies, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great, great, okay. So the ways in which these things will make a difference eventually in the project that you're implementing. Eventually, you also need to demonstrate a results framework. So that's what we call a log frame. You put on a typical table, you need to show the inputs. What do you have in-house, whether it's your staff time, your resources, whatever it is you have in-house, that you can contribute to the particular project that will ensure that you can carry out the activities. So you show those inputs, what those activities are, how the immediate results of those activities, and then what those results will lead to in terms of the outcomes, and then think about the impacts. I think generally speaking, and sometimes you will have donors that will tell you, demonstrate a log frame straight up. Some other people will just tell you, do an M&E, a simple M&E plan, capture how you want to do it, or they might just ask you for your theory of change. I think regardless of how you do it eventually, what is helpful is for you to be able to show how you want to be able to track the impact that you're going to make as a result of the work that you're doing. I know that a lot of us don't like M&E. We think it's too much. We think it's too hard. It can also look complicated. But I think at its basic level, monitoring and evaluation forces you to think critically about whether it is possible, whether what you are saying, the change you say you're going to make, whether it is possible or not. So even if that's the only benefit you get from it, help making you double check your assumptions, making you double check why you think A will translate into B. That is really the most important emphasis for that. Because as I have already told you from one of the first slides, money is very scarce. And the money is getting getting a lot scarcer. So if a donor is going to invest their money, their hard-earned taxpayer money inside your organization, then it's just what the current president, American president, will say common sense. It's just common sense for you to need to be able to show how well what you are proposing will take roots. What you are proposing will make a difference. One major problem is that the M&E costs are usually understated. And that's something that can make a donor feel like while you have written a very flowery M&E plan or a very flowery, you've talked about how many times you are going to do, let's say, data collection or monitoring visits. While you've done all of those things, the technical proposal, when you do not budget for it adequately, it makes the donor feel like all of that stuff that you wrote technically is fluff. You didn't mean it. You just wrote it because you wanted to have something to write. So these are the 5 mistakes I wanted to emphasize. And then just kind of move on very quickly to walk you through what I call a process. 3 phases of grant writing for eventually I wrap up with what the most important compelling elements are for a grant proposal for you. Then we could turn it over to have questions. I tell people that grant writing is a process. If you miss any step in the process, then you are putting in jeopardy your ability to generate resources. So it starts from pre-grant writing, and it moves on to grant writing, and then post-grant writing. So what this means, the pre part means, or the grant writing there means when the application is live. So pre-grant writing is, you're not supposed to wait passively till when the application, the call for proposal comes out and somebody sends it to you on WhatsApp. You're supposed to be doing things before that proposal goes live. Post-grant writing means when you submit the grant proposal, you're not powerless, you're not helpless. There are things you can do to be proactive, even while you're waiting to hear from the donor. And when you hear from the donor, there are a number of things you can still do. Pre-grant writing phase is all about being proactive. I recall a few years ago, I was, apologies, there's some interference on my background. I was leading a grant opportunity for funding or supporting an INGO in the US. And we're doing a lot of work around land administration and land rights in East Africa. And I was leading on the grant application for a land administration project in Malawi. This was funded by the Millennium Challenge Corporation in the US, a bid of more than $1 million. It was going to be very big, and we had heard from the grapevine that, hey, this application was going to go live in March of the next year. I started doing work in the pre-grant writing phase as from October. So I was tracking the donors forecasts using various US government links or US government websites to figure out what the forecast is and check what is coming through the pipeline. I was during that same process, I was also contributing because the donor also actually publicized the process of co-creating in terms of reference. So they asked for contributions. They sent out a request for contributions to develop the terms of reference. So I contributed my own insights towards what we felt the likely project activities should be, what the focus of MCC should be in Malawi in terms of land administration, all of those kinds of things. I continued all of that from October. Then we were having like this kind of quarterly forecast meetings where the program officer would come out and then introduce, talk a little bit about how far they have gone in developing the terms of reference, what they would need from us, those kinds of things. I worked with that up until like December. So by December, we started getting a very clear picture. Remember that the call for proposals was going to be out in March of the next year. But by December, we already had started getting a full picture of what could likely be requested from them. So that was when I went into the next points that I'm talking about here, which is the proposal writing team. And we determined that, hey, we're based in the US, we have some minimal foot on the ground in Kenya. We didn't have a lot of stuff in Malawi. So that's when I went in search for local Malawian land-focused organizations for us to partner with, and also started figuring out what kinds of team members would be useful to put on the bid for that particular opportunity. I did that from December up until like January towards February. And we did so much work in that pre-grant writing phase, created consortia, that when the grant application came live in March, we had signed MOUs with a team of more than like 15 different experts. We had signed agreements with more than about 4 Malawian local organizations that we're going to work with. So everything had pretty much come together. We even had started writing the basic, from what we understood, we started writing the basic proposal that we thought was going to be targeted towards what the focus of the call for proposal would be. Eventually, it was released in March. And we submitted the proposal 1 week. They gave us like a month when they released it. They released in March, we should submit it by like 15th of April. They gave us like 6 weeks. We submitted the proposal the first week after the proposal was released. Now, compare the work I did, and we won, by the way. Now, compare the work that I did in pre-grant writing phase. Compare my organization to one organization that just woke up, or one NGO nonprofit leader, let's say Malawi, that woke up and then they sent him the link for that opportunity on WhatsApp. And he's like, oh, this opportunity looks nice. So it's from one US agency. This is more than $1 million. Okay, I think we'll work on it. And then at that point in time, that's when they started working on it. Which of us do you think has the higher chance of success on that particular bid? Me, that has been working for the last 5 months before they got out the call for proposal, putting my ear to the ground, using donor intelligence, trying to figure out what's happening, or the nonprofit that just found out about it 3 weeks to the deadline on WhatsApp. You can put in the chat, which of us do you think is more likely to succeed, was more likely to succeed? If somebody wants to put it in the chat, oh, Falashari, thank you for saying me. Me, why? I was proactive. That's why I was more likely to succeed. I succeeded. Now, I understand that that's a very big grant. That's a very big donor. You might say, oh, there are no forecasts for you to check. There are no pipelines. Let me use Act Foundation as a case study. You know that they give grants on an annual basis. This year, their grant application opened January 18th, it was January 30th. So you know that around that January time, that's when the thing comes out. Let's imagine that you applied this year, you didn't get it. You already have an idea of what the template is like. This is the time for you to go back to, let me go back to some of the slides earlier. The slide on investing in building relationships. If you want to work in the pre-grant writing phase, that's when you should go in and you're working with like maybe other donors that are not perhaps as big or have forecasts like the example I shared. That's the time for you to go build a relationship with Abiodun and say, hi, Abiodun, I wanted to just share, I wanted to invite you to like a 20 minutes call so I can share what I'm doing in this sector, in healthcare, the amazing work we're doing and the impact that we're making. I would just like you to just like to introduce myself. And then she gives you 20 minutes and you go there, you talk about the work you do, talk about the things, the plans you're having to do, let's say the impact you've made, what you intend to do going forward. And let's imagine that you applied this year and you didn't get it. So you can now say, okay, Abiodun, now that I have you on the call, do you mind giving me some feedback? I applied actually, unfortunately, I couldn't make it. Can I get a little bit of some feedback on what I did wrong? And she shares that feedback with you. Now, you've talked to her, you've gotten feedback, and you already have an idea of what they usually do. You also know that, okay, based on what happened this year, by January of 2027, they could have another call for proposal. Now is the time. So let's say by November or December of this year, I expect that if you are looking to be proactive, you would already have taken the feedback from Abiodun, you would already have introduced yourself to her, and by extension to someone at Act Foundation. Between now and that, let's say, ending of the year, you would have been keeping her posted with all of the good work you're doing, sharing her links of the work that you're doing, all of those kind of things, building a relationship. Eventually, by November, December, you should have already started putting together your proposal using feedback from where you did not win this year, so that by January, because again, from what I see, it looked like there was a limited time for the application, was like maybe 2 to 3 weeks. By January already, even before the application goes live, you are ready. Why? Because you have done so much work in that pre-grant writing phase. Now, when it comes to the grant writing phase, there's very little that's left for you to do. And that is where you come in. That is where you ensure that you can improve your chances of success. So the donor doesn't have to be a very big one before you think, oh, so much that you think maybe you're powerless during the period of pre-grant writing. There are actually ways in which you can still show up, you can still be proactive, you can make moves in a way that improves your chances of success. When it comes to grant writing, the problem I see is people don't understand that it takes 3 components. I see people just take it on and then they just go on and then work, and immediately they begin to write like the scenario Abiodun gave. You see that it's doing 3 weeks, wait till it's 2 days, you forget about it. You remember, you say, oh, okay, I'm going to apply for this thing. You forget about it. Then you remember again, maybe somebody reshares it in the WhatsApp group you're in. You see it and you're like, oh my God, this thing is doing 3 weeks. Then you carry your laptop. Then you start putting something together. You write the proposal yourself. You write the budget yourself. Then you forget about it. Maybe you don't finish it up. Then a day to the thing, you now pick it up again. Then you finally submit it on the deadline day. You are most likely not going to win, because there are 3 components and you haven't taken cognizance of that. There's the managing people component, there's writing and formatting, and there's annexes. Create and enforce a proposal calendar. That's what I spoke about earlier. If you have 3 weeks for it, sit down, break down the task that it would involve for you to write that proposal during that time frame, and then allocate. Usually the way we do it is we just go on everybody's calendar on Google Calendar. If you all have like you're on Google, the same Google Workspace, and you create an event and say, all well to submit first draft of Act Foundation proposal by today's work intent, by 21st. And you send it as an event and everybody accepts it. So it's on everybody's calendar, and Orwell is accountable to all 3 of us. Everybody knows that whatever Orwell is doing, Orwell has to make sure that he's submitting that thing in the next 3 days. You can now say, okay, Abiodun to write the budget, submit on March 2022, March 22nd. And he sends it again as an invite, and everybody accepts it, and it shows up on everybody's calendar, and everybody knows that that's something that Abiodun has to deliver for us to make progress during that time frame towards the grant opportunity that we're working on. You need to manage people. I've already said, as executive director, you have no business writing the proposal. That's supposed to be the most experienced person in the room. That person doesn't write the proposal. That person is the one that sits over what is written and figures out if it has a fighting chance of succeeding. Get your best people to pitch in very early. Your finance, your M&E, your tech, your programs. Push to finish the proposal 3 days before the due date. When it comes to writing, you need to analyze the terms of reference carefully. Do you have what it takes? Do a go, no go decision. Must you submit something for this donor? What if it's not the right fit? What if your chances of winning is very low? Must you force yourself to submit something on it? Use the donor template or the evaluation criteria format. And this is a challenge I see. The donor can give a template for the technical proposal and the budget. Use it. If the donor doesn't give you the template, what I see most people do is usually we have like a boilerplate proposal in our Google Drive. Yeah, so something you've probably written, you just rework some sections of it and then send it out, depending, let's say like a key project you've worked on. So people could just take it the way they've written it in-house and submit it randomly to all these things. If the donor doesn't give you a template, that's a recipe for failure. What you're supposed to do, and this ties back to the analyze the terms of reference carefully. In the terms of reference, ideally, most times, they will tell you what the evaluation criteria is. Some people will actually indicate the scores they want to give. So they might say they will score organizational background and methodology 25 marks. Then they will give 30 marks to team personnel. Then they will give 15 marks to the budget, and they might give like 5 marks to the annexes. They have told you how they are going to score it. If there's no templates, especially for the technical proposal, you need to organize your proposal exactly in the way they said they are going to score it, not the way you wrote it, the way it is written in your Google Drive. It has to be written in the way they are going to score it. Why? If you give them what you wrote in your Google Drive, which obviously cannot be aligned with how they're going to score it, you will make it hard for them to figure out what marks to give you for organizational background and methodology. It's possible that you did not title your own as methodology. It's very likely. Maybe you said it's something like maybe past experience or something else, or activities. That's kind of how you put it down. So, and the more you stress, let me use the word, the more you stress the person reviewing your proposal to look through different sections of your proposal to figure out where your team members are written so that they can give you the marks for the team section, the more likely you are going to drop points eventually when it's time to score your work. So make it easy for yourself and for them. Create the structure exactly in the way they said they are going to grade it. So start from, in the example I gave you, start from organizational background and methodology, team personnel, maybe past experience, annexes, follow it in that order. That's how to make sure you're compliant and improve your chances. You need to cite research, not from 5 years ago, that's too far, from 3 years and today. So from research of 2026 up until 2023, nothing later. If not, otherwise, you run the risk of your evidence not being correct. You also need to format on time. It's very important. There has to be an alignment between the budget and the technical proposal. Now, this is because usually you are working with your finance person doing the budget and you are the proposal writer. You might write a proposal saying, you want to write for 5 activities. You want to have 5 activities, and then let's imagine that you say those 5 activities should cost $100,000. And you write that and you send it out, or that's what let's imagine the donor said the budget is 100,000 and you say you want to do 5 activities. You get it to your finance guy and he's like, no, these 5 activities to cost more than $100,000. So let's reduce it from 5 activities to 3 so that we can meet what the donor said is their amount, is their budget for this project. So you do that. Unfortunately, if you write the grant during a period where, if you are submitting the grant on deadline day, most times, you will make a mistake. This is confirmed because I've done it several times. You will make a mistake by not figuring out that, so let's call the first one you wrote technical proposal version 1 and budget proposal version 1. In the version 2, so let's say he forces you to reduce your technical proposal version 2 from 5 activities to 3 activities. Unfortunately, since you are rushing, and since you probably have not named them correctly, you might end up submitting a proposal version 2, technical proposal version 2, that says you are doing 3 activities. Or rather, yes, and then eventually send the budget version 1 that budgets for, let's say, 2 activities. So what that means is in your final submissions, you will mismatch the older version of the technical proposal with the most recent version of the budget. So anybody that sees it will know that there's a discrepancy. That's a problem for them, obviously. Annexes. You need to gather the admin docs quickly. Oftentimes, people focus on when there's a grant application, they start with the technical proposal first, then they do the budget next, then they gather the annexes maybe like 10 minutes before the portal closes. That's a big problem. A few years ago, I was leading on the grant proposal to the World Bank in South Sudan. And this was for like 150,000. And I had already reached out to the South Sudan office in Juba to say, hey, this is what I want to work on. So we had a meeting. Let me know who the staff I'm going to put on this bid are. Let me know how we're going to work on this bid together. They said, okay. I told them, these are the documents I need. These are the admin documents. Do you have them? They said, yes. I said, no problem. So I went on my own. I wrote the technical proposal. I wrote the budget. And of course, I was submitting on the deadline day. So when I tell you don't do deadline day things, I'm talking from experience. Unfortunately, and this proposal, we're submitting it in February. Unfortunately, we needed to attach a certificate of NGO compliance that they give to NGOs on an annual basis in South Sudan from the Juba office. We needed to attach it as an annex. When it came to the deadline day, as I was going to submit, I said to go into our shared drive and download that updated certificate they told me they had. So I downloaded it and I saw that the certificate expired in December of the last year. Now remember that this was February. Let's mind that it was like February of 2026, for instance. So it was February. And the certificate had expired 2 months before in December. So I reached out to them and said, hey, this certificate is expired. What do we do? And they're like, oh, it takes like 2 weeks for our local government to process the certificates and all of those kinds of things. And I said, I'm submitting the proposal today. So I don't know how we're going to do it. And they said, nothing can be done. So that's how we dropped the bid. That's how we could not go on to submit the proposal. Because somehow we dropped the ball, myself included, on checking our annexes and being sure that they were up to date. So we left it to the last minute. So when I tell you gather the admin docs quickly, I am telling you that it is going to be a problem for you eventually if you don't do that. The second thing is reworking your CVs to speak to the terms of reference requirements. Abiodun, can you still hear me well? I know there's a bit of sound in my background.
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Maybe 1 second. Let me see if I can reduce the noise intersection.
I'm not hearing any noise though. You're muted.
Okay, apologies. I thought you were hearing that, but I was sharing it for a bit. Okay, so reworking the CVs. Usually, we all have the CVs in our in our Google Drive, in our shared drive, and the CVs are written based on our organization's CV template. If you don't rework the CVs, you will not be able to write it and highlight it in a way that meets the requirements of the terms of reference for that particular funding opportunity that you're working on. Now, for instance, if they say they need the team leader or the project director to have a master's degree, 10 years of working on, let's say, gender-based violence, And 5 of those 10 years should be working on projects with international organizations, not local nonprofits. This is just hypothetically now. If that's what they are looking for in a project director, if you fail to rework your CV from the standard way it's written, where you list everybody's experience randomly in their past experiences, etc., in a very chronological order, and you just submit it like that, you run the risk of not emphasizing those 3 key things that I gave as an example that the donor might be looking for. The 10 years of experience, the working with a particular subsect of donors, a particular target population, those kinds of things. So you need to make sure you rework the CVs to speak to the terms of reference requirements. You have to ask questions if you're unsure of what the required documentation is. In the post-grant writing phase, be aware that it could take anywhere from 6 months to 1 year. Be patient. Track the expected response dates. Reach out to the donors program officer for specific updates on your application. You are not going to win every application. Let me just let you know that. You need to request specific feedback so you can improve. Still in that South Sudan scenario, I did a proposal of about 250,000 USD. And this was for some work on third-party monitoring. Now, my firm had already had significant success with the World Bank. We had won a lot of their proposals prior to when I wrote this one. So it was like a normal walk in the park. We wrote an expression of interest. They accepted it. They invited us to the next stage to write a full application. And then I wrote it, and it was looking all good. It was looking like another sealed win. And we're shocked to hear that we didn't win. We said, what could this be? We have everything. We have so much past experience. We have strong relationships with the guys at the Juba office. Like, what exactly was happening? So we're disappointed. I reached out and I said, hi, we're sorry, we're really sad that we can't get to work with you on this time. I mean, at this time, is there a way you can spare about 20 minutes to just kind of show us where we dropped the ball on this particular issue? And they reached out and I said, okay, let's do a Zoom. And they took us on a Zoom call. And they walked us through our application, saw everything, and we found out that we lost points on the team personnel section. People that we fielded, they were not meeting the requirements. We had like significant competition from our typical local competitors on the ground. So we lost. And it wasn't something we had already added in our win rates. Like, we're so sure. So it wasn't, it was really sad for us. But what we did then was that specific feedback that they gave us, we put it into practice. We took it under our wings, and a few months later, they brought out another opportunity for even a higher amount of money. We submitted it using that guidance that we got from them, and we're able to win eventually. So don't give up on the fact that you probably have not won from a particular donor. If you can get that specialized feedback, or if you can, I don't know, sometimes I know, because I've made requests where donors have refused to respond. And I'm like, what exactly did I do? This thing looked really great. You can ask a peer, you can ask another donor, you can ask somebody else that perhaps was not involved in it. So just kind of give you a read through and tell you what they think about it, preferably maybe another donor, so that they can give you like that donor perspective. That's helpful. What I've been trying to say for the last couple of minutes is you need to organize the way you write grant proposals. It needs to follow a particular flow. It cannot be spontaneous. It cannot be on a deadline. It cannot be last minute. It cannot be something you leave towards the end. It has to be something that you are proactively working towards. There might be various templates, there might be various ways in which a grant application might come, but typically there are a number of elements of a successful grant proposal. You need to have that. Organizational background. What are you doing? How have you done it? What impact have you made? What is the challenge in where you're responding to? Why are you focused on that thus far? What inroads have you made with the local communities? The problem statement. The fact that there's a problem doesn't mean now is the time to solve the problem. If you say you want to end poverty in Nigeria, that's something that has been on since Nigeria got independence. So the fact that a problem exists doesn't mean you should be giving funding to tackle that problem. You have to show that everything aligns, there's that urgency. You have to use user-sent data and show that the environment is favorable towards you tackling that particular problem at that time. The objectives has to be smart. It has to be specific. It needs to be measurable. You have to add some time indicators to it, amongst other things. The team personnel has to be the right people, not just any random people you have in the team. Consider if you're able to get some people to come in like on a part-time basis, if you're able to get their consent to be able to support you. If you don't have what it takes for the team that donor is requesting or indicating in the terms of reference, don't try to wing it. You need the right people. Sometimes that might be a decision, it might be a deal breaker. It might be the reason why you don't apply for something. You need to have the right team on ground to implement it. Don't take it lightly. Your M&E plan has to be solid. After you write it, sit back, read it out to yourself. Get somebody to look at it. Does this make sense? Is it possible to, is there a way I can actually verify this? Does it sound rational? Is there a flow between the activities that I'm proposing and the outcome that I expect to emerge? What's the relevant past experience you have compared to this? Then your sustainability plan. It's not about putting them in a WhatsApp group. It's not about training them so that they can replicate it amongst them. It has to be something solid. How are you going to be able to get that funding to make it work? Are you going to use social enterprise models? Are you going to use counterpart funding? It has to be something that sounds believable, that you can actually do. So make sure that it's something that that shows that the work will not end simply because the funding tranche to you has ended. If there's anything I want you to take out from this session today, and I know it's been a lot, so forgive me if you feel overwhelmed. The landscape really has changed. This is not COVID when you thought things would bounce back. This is not, I don't know, earlier than COVID when you thought maybe during the financial crisis it would just slow down, then things will pick up. Things are not going to pick up in the way you expect. Now you need to invest in relationship building to proactively mitigate those mistakes that will make donors put your application by the side in this era of very crowded applications. You're only going to secure grants if you work in a very structured process. It starts from before the grant goes live to very efficient grant writing, then proper follow-up after the grant applications. If you need one-on-one support, you can reach out to me, my email here, or keep in touch with me at Fundraise with Allwell every Monday by 9 a.m. in Lagos, 11 a.m. in Nairobi or in East Africa. My company is focused on African nonprofits, supporting nonprofits in English and French, guiding them towards corporate partnerships, social enterprise models, building relationships with donors, finding new donors, and then planning strategically for their fundraising in 3 to 5 year strategic plans. Thank you so much. Over to you, Abiodun, for questions. I hope we have enough time for them. Thanks.
Right, yeah, I see some clapping in the chat room. Thank you so much, Allwell. Thank you so much. You have dropped so much gem, Jerry. But I was also taking notes as you were speaking. A couple of things that you said actually resonated really well with me. You know, speaking from even from two different sides of the table now, as someone who had applied for grants in the past, you know, and then as someone who um, um, now, oversees grant reception. If you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. I see that a couple of questions have come in, and we'll take them in a moment. So I'll go to the Q&A session box. Okay, someone says resource mobilization has become more difficult. I guess that has been established already. The question is there anything to learn about growing under the wings of parents or senior uplifters? So I'm guessing this person is new in the game and they're trying to find out if there's a way they can learn, from the big boys, the big girls in the social sector space. What do you have to say about that? You're muted.
Sorry, I think anytime I mute, I really muted for a while. Indeed, there's a lot you can learn. You can learn the importance of relationship building. That's something you can learn from organizations that have been here for 20, 30, 40 years. It's very helpful. You need to be able to go out. Like I said, if you're in Nigeria, join those networks, wherever you are, really. I do a lot of work with the Kenyan Association of Fundraising Professionals and Ghana Civil Society Forum. So wherever you are in Africa, there are a lot of networks that you should be part of, improving your internal abilities, letting people get to know the work that you're doing, making friends along the way among your non-profit peers and also with donors. Something that I would advise, and something I even want to do a lot more of now as a consultant, is go for this kind of non-profit conferences. So there's the African Philanthropy Network conference that they do every year, the African Philanthropy Forum. In Nigeria, there's a Nigerian network of NGOs conference. They had it like in November last year. I think it's usually November, December. Just go out there, meet people, share what you're doing, all of those kind of good stuff. However, I think because of how much the landscape has changed, there's no much difference now. In fact, I feel like older organizations are disadvantaged because they're already used to how things used to be. Yeah, they are used to writing the grants and winning it maybe almost immediately because they were the major organizations that the donors knew. They probably have built like very strong relationships with USAID, and now USAID is gone. So I think that now is probably the right time to be a new person because as the new kid on the block, you are more innovative, you are more open to new ideas. You can try out social enterprise models, maybe sell products, maybe provide consulting services. That's another ball game. Or use the assets that you already have. You can also try reaching out to new partners like companies, corporate partnerships is also something you might want to dip your hand in or try individual giving. So there are a lot of new ways now. And generally speaking, I'm thinking that seeing that more organizations are more receptive to these alternative models now because they see that there's significant trouble in how things were funded before. So don't feel too disadvantaged compared to organizations that have been here for a while. Maybe borrow their ability to create really strong relationships with donors from them. But and then again as well, you can also take like the best practices that you might see a number of them implement in grant writing. But I think this is a good time for you to be new because now you're more open to new ideas, like these alternative models. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ola. Okay, this person says of late there's a new trend in which most prospective donors deliberately go out to look out for specific organizations just because there's an insider there. And the person is saying, how do we go about ensuring that we get in the room in this kind of places because they feel like there's some things that may be going on, maybe money changing hands, money exchanging hands rather, or even some people promising that okay, if I get this court, I'll give you so court. So he's asking, how do we manage this issue?
No, I don't think money is changing hands. I don't think people are getting cuts. But indeed, I hear what you're saying. I think I see a lot of it with foundation donors. They call it invite-only applications or, yeah, invite-only applications, basically, where they have to know you, they have to call on you and ask you to come submit a proposal or reach out to you because they have some funding amount that they want to give out. It's tough to break into that sector, into that space. This is why I think that point I made around how to position yourself in donors is very, very important for you. When I said you need to be investing in relationship building, going to those conferences, if not, of course, it's very expensive to go there, so I understand. But on LinkedIn, that's a leveler. On LinkedIn, in fact, that's actually how I reached out to Abiodun. I just saw the great work she was doing. I jumped into her DM and said, hey, I think what you're doing is really nice. I feel like we're on the same trajectory. If you have some time, let me get to show you how I'm also working on similar issues like you and explore ways of partnerships. That's exactly how I broke into being in touch with Abiodun. That's something that could work. But again, it only works if you are doing what I said here, showcasing thought leadership in your subject area, and if you are demonstrating a strong track record of success. So when you do all of that, and then you're already seeing, you're dropping nuggets in your focus area of, let's say it's healthcare, you know what the trends are, you have an opinion on where things are headed, you have advice, you are thinking, you're not just implementing projects, you're getting lessons learned from the projects and you're sharing them publicly, you're connecting the dots. You look like somebody that has his finger on the pulse, that knows, that has an idea of where things are headed. So you become very interesting to those donors. And indeed, those are opportunities where they might want to reach out to you. Or no, you can also go on the offensive, reach out to them, find the donors you want to connect with, and go into make sure you have those things, because when you reach out to them, they're going to check you out. They're going to check you on LinkedIn, for instance. They're going to Google you. So if you have all of those kind of track record beyond you, you're showing that thought leadership, then you can go after them and say, hi, I see the great work you're doing. I love how you're funding work in this space. I think we're doing incredible work too. We're on the same wavelength. If you have 20 minutes of your time, don't ask them for funding. They're not going to fund you. Ask them for advice. So ask them for an opportunity to rub minds and share ideas. Ask them for 20 minutes. They give you the 20 minutes. You come in. You don't ask for funding in the call. You listen to them. First of all, you do your research about what the work they're doing. You read their strategic plans. You read what they're focused on now. You read who they're funding. You mark all of those things before you come into the call. Then you talk intelligently in the call. In the call, you show what you are doing yourself as an organization and discuss that and say that you would really be interested in opportunities where and show how the work you're doing fits into the donor priorities, not really what they're funding. But like I said, every donor has at least a 5-year plan. Download it and read it, it's free. So show how the work you're doing fits into what they're prioritizing for the next 5 years and look like an indispensable partner. Eventually, they will call you. So you have that call, keep engaging with them one-on-one. When an opportunity shows up, they will think about you. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Oh, well. All right. I'll ask this two in one. So, you know how some nonprofits could actually be, just starting out or perhaps struggling with even managing their team in terms of paying salaries and all of that. So, if, nonprofits, small ones that, for example, do not have a particular officer who is the M&E person, or they don't have a finance person, or, or a comms person, so to say, and they still need to write great proposals. What would be your advice for such an organization? And while you answer that, please tell us your opinion on the use of AI in proposal writing.
Um, I know you're a small nonprofit. I know that money is tight. You probably don't have any staff. Even yourself, you're probably not on salary. But I strongly advise you against you writing the proposal alone. I think at the very least, if you are a small nonprofit and you've been here for a few years, 2-3 years, ideally you will have some very trustworthy volunteers that work with you. At least some people you can call on to implement your programs, some people that you can call on, that you can count on to usually be at the forefront when you are carrying out your advocacy, your trainings. Those are people that do your work with you. You need to try your best as the executive director. You need to try your best to delegate that responsibility of writing it. That's why I say it has to be somebody that's trusted. It's not just anybody, obviously. Like a volunteer that perhaps has been with you for a year or two, they understand what the things are. You can have an initial meeting with the person to let them know that, okay, this is what you're applying for, that kind of thing. Then people can now, in the meeting, you can now discuss the activities you want the volunteer to write about, the activities you want to carry out. So in a nutshell, you say everything that you want to be done in the proposal, but you don't write it yourself. Because somebody has to take the position of reviewing it. Somebody. And that somebody is the best person to take that position is you. It has to be you. If you don't take that position and you end up writing it yourself, then who is going to critique you? Who is going to review it? Who is going to make sure that what you are writing is aligned, as much aligned to what the donor is requesting for? I mean, you can try to do it, but we all know how biased we are when we try to evaluate ourselves. So you stand a better chance to have somebody. There's no way you tell me that you can tell me that you don't have full-time staff, and I agree, but you can't tell me that there are no people working with you that get what you're doing, that can put pen to paper, and even if they'll make typographical errors, they at least can write the basic proposal using the structure you give them for you to evaluate. Yeah, that's really the best way. So that's something you should try to do. If that person writes, even if it's just two of you, let the person write the proposal, let him attempt to do the budget, then let him bring it to you. And you review it, you give him feedback, all of that. But you most importantly are focused on the terms of reference and what needs to be done going forward.
Hello, all well. Okay, let's give
Yes,
him a
yes, yes.
moment
I was done with that
for.
question.
Oh, okay. What's your take on the use of AI in writing
AI.
proposals?
AI is helpful. AI is everywhere now. You need to make sure if you use AI, and me, I scarcely want to use it to write. I like to use it to research, to really understand how to do things. And I want to ask a bit deeper questions. I mean, maybe deeper questions around, I might write the M&E plan, for instance, and say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think this is really well structured? Does it hit the nail on the head? Does it lead towards the change I'm trying to make? If you use it to produce a draft following, let's say, your prior proposals, it wouldn't be bad. But you need to review and over-review it to make sure it's speaking your language, to make sure it's personalized, because an AI written drafted proposal that is just submitted straightforward, it's not going to fly. We're all getting very good at AI now. So we can all sniff when something is fully artificially intelligent, is fully AI developed and doesn't really doesn't hit the nail on the head. It's also possible that the donor might also have an AI detector as well, to screen applications that come in. So you also want to make sure that your AI supported draft is so human enough that it won't be flagged for AI one, and it is very, very targeted towards what the donor is looking for as well. So, but for me, I really just like to use it for deeper research, for deep dives, to really test what I'm writing, and then maybe I can have like redrafts, but I don't use it to write the entire thing. I feel somehow about that, yeah, and I don't think that's the right way to do it. You can use
True,
it,
true.
obviously, but you must make sure that you're humanizing the AI outputs.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. Okay, our YouTube family, they also have a question for us. I have here, what advice do you give to a nonprofit that has existed for at least 5 years, yet to win a grant and are intentional about building structure as it was formed based on passion? Can you enlist the must-have for this kind of nonprofit? E.g., what kind of documents do you think that they must have? What's the minimum staff profile and any other information you have?
Yeah. You want to be documenting your reports. If you've been here for 5 years, I hope that means you've been doing great work over the last 5 years, even if you haven't gotten any external funding. In terms of the documents you must have, you can also put yourself in, you can try to put yourself in the mind of a donor that's covering a new organization that say they have been here for 5 years. What would you like to see from them to be sure that they are credible, to be sure that they are helpful? So what I would like to see is annual reports. Even if you don't have annual reports for the last 4 years, at least annual report for last year that just finished, 2025 and maybe 2024. And what's an annual report? A very basic description of the projects that you have done, the impact you've made. It's very straightforward. Start with an introduction, your mission, your values, talk about the projects that you've done, talk about add your partners towards the end of it. Yeah, pretty much that's like a very basic structure of it. Write those projects, put pictures, talk about the impact you've made. If you have an idea of what your strategy is over the next couple of years, put it there. Have that, add your partners towards the end, put it in a PDF document, enter into Canva, design a PDF document, and voila, you have an annual report that is pretty basic. You should do that. You should also, I know this one is more expensive. It's helpful if you audit your financial statements, at least for the last 2 years. I think that is helpful too, as well. Internally, so the annual report and the financial statements, internally, you want to have policies that guide your finances, policies for your programs, for, let's say, your recruitment, those kind of at least basic policies that show that things are working in the right direction in this organization. Then it might be difficult for you to get your first donor. But again, you might find like some really good, some really helpful angel investor kind of donors that might fund you with $5,000, $10,000, something, people that are interested, like startup organizations. So what I would suggest is maybe try to document proof of your individual donations, or what we call individual giving, that you're getting, donations you're getting from friends and from family. Let's say if you're also making some products by doing some products by the side, try and get those kind of things, those kind of what's it called, and put it together as the sources of funding that you've gotten over maybe the last 2 years at least. That will be helpful to let anybody know that you're still generating some income, even if it's not through traditional methods. And you are also putting things in place that donors will be interested in. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We have another question here, and I believe that Orwell's response has taken care of that. And finally, because of time, we'll take just one more question. Mistura asks, how do we build strong relationships with donors, especially as growing organization who's just finding her feet?
Mhm. Good. So you have to use thought leadership. That's what I think. I would emphasize LinkedIn. I think it's a free platform that democratizes all of us. So whether you're a 40-year-old NGO or you're a 1-year-old NGO, we all have the LinkedIn platform. And if you notice, most of the CEOs, most of the director of partnerships in these donor organizations that you might be targeting, they're quite active, or at least they have a presence there. If you begin to speak a little bit about what you're doing, if you also begin to create that presence that you have in-house, that will, create a strong track record around the work that you're doing. That will also help amplify your case. Then you can decide to go pick out like maybe 2 or 3 of them that you think are really most aligned to you, and try to reach out to them, show the impact that you've made, and just kind of let them know that, hey, this is an opportunity. You want to be also be able to see if there are opportunities for collaboration. That's something you can do online. Offline, you want to join any form of networks, any form of coalitions, and be active there as well, so that you can improve your chances of being found, of being known. So when they ask people, let's say you reached out to Act Foundation and they wanted to double check to know if you are somebody that is solid in this space, they might ask other non-profit networks that they know, hey, have you heard of this person? What do you know about this person's work? So you also want to be showing up in those kind of spaces as well. Beyond that, you need to be putting yourself out there as much as possible, to show that you have something to contribute within this space. If possible, if you have the means, try to go to this kind of conferences where you know that these donors would hang out in. Ideally, when you go there, try to get a few minutes with them, just to introduce yourself, to get their contacts and keep them in the loop eventually. When you have those contacts, if you have like a call from LinkedIn, try to get their WhatsApp numbers. It's really helpful for you to keep in touch a lot more informally and more consistently. That might be helpful. Thank you.
Mm. A very, very big thank you to you all well for taking out time to be here in spite of your very, very busy schedule. So, like I said, because of time, we won't be able to take more questions, but we have dropped Allwell's contact in the chat room. If you still have questions for him, please feel free to reach out to him. He has generously agreed to respond to all of your questions. The alternative is to send us an email at programs@actrustfoundation.org, and we will also respond to you. Also, do not forget that he spoke about his session on Monday mornings on LinkedIn. Please look for Allwell on LinkedIn and ensure that you participate in those sessions. I tell you, you will get value from them. If you do not mind, can we take a quick photograph of every one of us in the room if you're able to put on your camera? All right, if you can put on your cameras, let's take a picture of everyone in the room and then we'll round up. Okay, I see most people are set with their cameras on. If any noisy background or if you feel like your background is not going to work, that's totally fine. We'll see as many people as can show us here. I'm seeing a lot of lovely, handsome, and beautiful faces. Hello, everyone. Hello. Okay, we'll take it in a few seconds. Just a moment. A few more seconds and we'll be done. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so as you exit the room, you will see a survey that will pop up from Zoom. Please do well to fill that survey just to help us get better and better at what we do so that we also understand how we need to keep helping you in the social sector space. I promise it takes no more than 3 minutes. All right, please stay tuned. Ensure that you follow us on our social media handles for more trainings that will be coming up in the month. So every other month we run training sessions here. I trust that you found this one very, very impactful and you will come for the next one. Visit our website, visit us on social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Go to our YouTube channels. You will find all of the training sessions that we've had in previous years, and I tell you, you will get a lot of value from them. Like we mentioned, our ActPod, it's our storytelling platforms where we come to showcase social impact change makers in Africa. And the one that is currently running is about Aramide Kayode, who is the founder of Talent Mind Academy. That young lady is doing great stuff for young children in the education sector. So you want to listen, it's available on our YouTube channel. It's also available on Spotify and other podcast platforms. So I want to say again, thank you so much for attending. We hope that everything that you heard today has sparked some new ideas and it will now start opening doors, to your funding success. If there's something that you want to start afresh, if there's a new thing you want to start doing, and you can drop it in the chat room. Just, is there something you have learned? Is there something new that you want to start applying to your next proposal application? Please put them in the chat box. Okay. All right. Once you put them in, it's a good time to say goodbye. And yes, this is going to be available on YouTube. So if you intend to watch again and again and again, it is available on our YouTube channel and you can catch it right there. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon here from Nigeria. Bye, everyone.